Okay. Okay. Oh, wait. Let me see. Oop, okay. Let me just try this out. Okay, hold on. I went away, but I will be back because I need to restart this. Need to restart this. Let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me. Let me know. Okay, now it should be working. Okay. Well, welcome to the stream, everyone. Today I'm gonna read The Life of Pi. I have the book with me. I also have the PDF. So, yeah, let's get started. I'm gonna tweet out that I'm streaming right now. Let me see. Let me see if the link works. Okay, we got it. Okay, so the link works. Okay, let's do this. Life of Pi, a novel. So this, let's see, flare, the last word is flare, so I'll just scroll down when it hits to flare. Okay, I have the book with me like I mentioned, so let's get started. Author's note. This book was born as I was hungry. Let me explain. In the spring of 1996, my second book, a novel, came out in Canada. It didn't fare well. Reviewers were puzzled or damned it with faint praise. Then readers ignored it. Despite my best efforts at playing the clown or the trapeze artist, the media circus made no difference. This book did not move. Books lined the shelves of bookstores like kids standing in a row to play baseball or soccer, and mine was the gangly, unathletic kid that no one wanted on their team. It vanished quickly and quietly. The fiasco did not affect me too much. I had already moved to another story, a novel set in Portugal in 1939. Only I was feeling restless and I had little money. So I flew to Bombay. This is not so illogical if you realize three things: that a stint in India will beat the restlessness out of any living creature, that a little money can go a long way there, and that a novel set in Portugal in 1939 may have very little to do with Portugal in 1939. I'd been to India before in the north for 5 months. On that first trip, I had to come to the subcontinent completely unprepared. Actually, I had a preparation of one word. When I told a friend who knew the country well of my travel plans, he said casually, "They speak a funny English in India. They like words like bamboozle." I remembered his words as my plane started its descent towards Delhi. So the word bamboozle was my one preparation for the rich, noisy, functioning madness of India. I used the word on occasion, and truth be told, it served me well. To a clerk at a train. Okay. Train station. Let me see. I remember playing. Okay. Okay. I didn't think the station. Okay, train station. I said I didn't think the fare would be so expensive. You're not trying to bamboozle me, are you? He smiled and chanted, "No, sir. There is no bamboozlement here. I have quoted you the correct fare." Okay, let me go here. Scroll on down. Okay, let me get this up. Okay. This second time to India, I knew better what to expect, and I knew what I wanted. I would settle in a hill station and write my novel. I had visions of myself sitting at a table on a large veranda. My notes spread out in front of me next to a steaming cup of tea. Green hills heavy with mist would lie at my feet, and the shrill cries of monkeys would fill my ears. The weather would be just right, requiring a light sweater and mornings and evenings, and sometimes short-sleeved midday. Thus set up, pen in hand, for the sake of greater truth. I would turn Portugal into a fiction. That's what fiction is about, isn't it? The selective transforming of reality, the twisting of it to bring out its essence. What need did I have to go to Portugal? The lady who ran the place would tell me stories about the struggle to boot the British out. We would agree on what I was to have for lunch and supper the next day. After my writing day was over, I would go for walks in the rolling hills of the tea estates. Okay, so it ends at the PDF ends at story, so I have to find that. Let's see. Unfortunately, here. Okay. Unfortunately, the novel sputtered, coughed, and died. It happened in MATEL, not far from Bombay, a small hill station with some monkeys but no tea estates. It's a misery peculiar to would-be writers. Your theme is good as are your sentences. Your characters are so ruddy with life they practically need birth certificates. The plot you've mapped out for them is grand, simple, and gripping. You've done your research, gathered the facts, historical, social, climatic, culinary, that will help your story its feels of authenticity. The dialogue zips along, crackling with tension. The descriptions burst with color, contrast, and telling detail. Really, your story can only be great. But it all adds up to nothing. In spite of the obvious shining promise of it, there comes a moment when you realize that the whisper that has been pestering you all along from the back of your mind is speaking the flat, awful truth. It won't work. An element is missing. That spark that brings life to a real story. Regardless of whether the history or the food is right, your story is emotionally dead. That's the crux of it. The discovery is something and soul destroying, I tell you. It leaves you with an aching hunger. From MATEL, I mailed the notes of my failed novel. I mailed them to a fictitious address in Siberia, with a return address equally fictitious in Bolivia. After the clerk had stamped the envelope and thrown away into a sorting bin, I sat down glum and disheartened. What now, Tolstoy? What other bright ideas do you have for your life? I asked myself. Well, I still had a little money and I was still feeling restless. I got up and walked out of the post office to explore the south of India. Okay, so he's exploring India. Okay, let me OBS. Okay, policeman. Okay. I would have liked to say I'm a doctor to those who ask me what I did, doctors being the current purveyors of magic and miracle, but I'm sure we would have had a bus accident around the next bed, and with all eyes fixed on me, I would have to explain amidst the crying and moaning of victims that I met in law, then to their appeal to help them sue the government over the mishap. I would have to confess that, as a matter of fact, it was a bachelor's in philosophy, next to the shout to what meaning such a bloody tragedy could have. I would have to admit that I had hardly touched Kierkegaard, and so on. I stuck to the humble, bruised truth. Along the way, here and there, I got the response, "A writer, is that so? I have a story for you." Most times, the stories were little more than anecdotes, short of breath and short of life. I read at the town of Pondicherry, a tiny self-governing union territory south of Madras. On the coast of Tamil Nadu, in population and size, it is an inconsequent part of India by comparison. Prince Edward Island is a giant within Canada, but history has set it apart. For Pondicherry was once the capital of that most modest of colonial empires, French India. The French would have liked to rival the British very much so, but the only Raj they managed to get was a handful of small ports. They clung to these for nearly 300 years. They led Pondicherry in 1954, leaving behind wide buildings, broad streets, and right angles to okay. To each other, street names such as Rue de la Marine and Rue Saint Louis, and Kipis caps for the policemen. Okay, I'm gonna scroll down. I was at the Indian Coffee House on Nehru Street. Nehru Street. It's one big room with green walls and a high ceiling. Fans whirl above you to keep the warm, humid air moving. The place is furnished to capacity with identical square tables, each within its complement of 4 chairs. You sit where you can, with whoever is at a table. The coffee is good, and they serve French toast. Conversation is easy to come by, and so a spry, bright-eyed, elderly man with great shocks of pure white hair was talking to me. I've confirmed to him that Canada was cold, that French was indeed spoken in parts of it, and that I liked India, and so on and so forth. The usual light talk between friendly, curious Indians and foreign backpackers. He took in my line of work with the widening of the eyes and a nodding of the head. It was time to go. I had my hand up, trying to catch my waiter's eye to get the bill. Then the elderly man said, "I have a story that will make you believe in God." I stopped waving my hand, but I was suspicious. What was this, a Jehovah's Witness knocking at my door? Does the story take place 2,000 years ago in a remote corner of the Roman Empire? I asked. No. Was he some sort of Muslim evangelist? Does it take place in 7th century Arabia? No. It starts right here in Pondicherry just a few years back, and it ends. And I am delighted to tell you, it is the very country you come from, and it will make me believe in God. Yes, that's a tall order. Not so tall that you can't reach. My waiter appeared. I hesitated for a moment. I ordered 2 coffees. We introduced ourselves. His name is Francis Adirubazami. Please tell me your story, I said. Oh, sorry. I am... hold on. I'm trying to find where I am on this PDF. I waited. Okay, I'm like right here. Sorry if you're watching me and you're seeing this. Okay. You must pay. Okay, please tell me your story, I said. You must pay proper attention, he replied. I will. I brought out my pen and notepad. Tell me, have you been to the botanical garden? He asked. I went yesterday. Did you notice the toy train tracks? I did. A train still runs on Sundays for the amusement of children, but it used to run twice an hour every day. Did you take note of the names of the stations? One is called Roseville. It's right next to the Rose Garden. That's right. And the other? I don't remember. The sign was taken down. The other station was once called Zootown. The toy train had 2 stops, Roseville and Zootown. Once upon a time, there was a zoo in the Pondicherry Botanical Garden. He went on. I took notes, the elements of the story. You must talk to him, he said, of the main character. I knew him very well. Knew him very, very well. He's a grown man now. You must ask him all the questions you want. Later in Toronto, among 9 columns of paddles in the phone book, I found him, the main character. My heart pounded as I dialed his phone number. The voice that answered had an Indian lilt to it. Its Canadian accent, light but unmistakable. Oh, whoops. Okay. Unmistakable, like a trace of incense in the air. That was a very long time ago, he said, yet He agreed to meet. We met many times. He showed me the diary he kept during the events. He showed me the yellowed newspaper clippings that made him briefly, obscurely famous. He told me his story. All the while I took notes. Nearly a year later, after considerable difficulties, I received a tape and a report from the Japanese Ministry of Transport. It was as I listened to that tape, I agreed with Mr. Adirubasami that this was indeed a story to make you believe in God. It seemed natural that Mr. Patel's story should be told mostly in the first person, in his voice and through his eyes, but any inaccuracies or mistakes are mine. I have a few people to thank. I'm mostly indebted to Mr. Patel. My gratitude to him is as boundless as the Pacific Ocean, and I hope that my telling of this tale does not disappoint him. For getting me started on this story, I have Mr. Adurabesami to thank. For helping me complete it, I'm grateful to three officials of exemplary professionalism, Mr. Kazuhiko Oda, lately of the Japanese Embassy in Ottawa, Mr. Hiroshi Watanabe of Oika Shipping Company, and especially Mr. Tomohiro Okamoto of the Japanese Ministry of Transport, now retired. Also, I'm indebted to Mr. Morsier Skler. Okay, hard to pronounce names. For the spark of life. Lastly, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to that great institution of Canada Council for the Arts, without whose grant I would not have brought together this story that has nothing to do with Portugal in 1939. If we citizens do not support our artists, then we sacrifice our imagination on the altar to crude reality. We end up believing nothing and having worthless dreams. Okay, part 1. Toronto and Pondicherry. Okay, chapter 1. My suffering left me sad and gloomy. Academic study and the steady, mindful practice of religion slowly brought me back to life. I have kept up with what some people would consider my strange religious practices. After 1 year of high school, I attended the University of Toronto and took a double major, bachelor's degree. My majors were religious studies and zoology. My fourth-year thesis for religious studies concerned certain aspects of the cosmogony theory of Isaac Luria, the great 16th century Kabbalist from Safed. My zoology thesis was a functional analysis of the thyroid gland of the three-toed sloth. I chose the sloth because its demeanor calm, quiet, and introspective. There's something to soothe my shattered self. There are two-toed sloths and there are three-toed sloths, the case being determined by the forepaws of the animals. Since all sloths have 3 claws on their hind paws, I had the great luck of one summer of studying the three-toed sloth in situ in the equatorial jungles of Brazil. It is a highly intriguing creature. Its only real habit is indolence. It sleeps or rests on average 20 hours a day. Our team tested the sleep habits of 5 wild three-toed sloths by placing on their heads in the early evening after they've fallen asleep bright red plastic dishes filled with water. We found them still in place late the next morning, the water of the dishes swarming with insects. The sloth is at its busiest at sunset. Using the word busy here is the most relaxed most relaxed sense. It moves along the bough of a tree in its characteristic upside-down position at the speed of roughly 400 meters an hour. On the ground, it crawls to the next tree at the rate of 250 meters an hour. When unmotivated, which is 440 times slower than a motivated cheetah. Unmotivated, it covers 4 or 5 meters an hour. In an hour. The three-toed sloth is not well informed about the outside world. On a scale of 2 to 10, where 2 represents unusual dullness and 10 extreme acuity, BB 1926 gave the sloth's sense of taste, touch, sight, and hearing a rating of 2 and its sense of smell a rating of 3. If you come upon a sleeping three-toed sloth in the wild, two or three nudges should suffice to awaken it. It will then look sleepily in every direction but yours. Why? It should go about its uncertain, since the sloth sees everything in a magoo-like blur. As for hearing, the sloth is not so much deaf as uninterested in sound. BB reported that firing guns next to sleeping or feeding sloths elicited little reaction, and the sloth's slightly better sense of smell should not be overestimated. They are said to be able to sniff and avoid decayed branches. But Bullock, 1968, reported that sloths fall to the ground clinging to decayed branches often. How does it survive, you might ask? Precisely by okay. Precisely by being so slow. Sleepiness and slothfulness keeps it out of harm's way from the notice of jaguars, ocelots, harpy, eagles, and anacondas. A sloth's hair is sheltered in algae that is blown during the dry season and green during the wet season, so the animal blends in with the surrounding moss and foliage. It looks like a nest of white ants or squirrels, or like nothing at all, but part of a tree. The three-toed sloth lives a peaceful vegetarian life in perfect harmony with its environment. A good-natured smile is forever on its lips, reported Turler, 1966. I've seen that smile with my own eyes. I'm not one given to projecting human traits and emotions onto animals, but many a time during the month in Brazil, looking up at sloths in repose, I felt I was in the presence of upside-down yogis deep in meditation, or hermits deep in prayer. Lives being those intense, imaginative lives were beyond the reach of my scientific probing. Sometimes I got my majors mixed up. A number of my fellow religious studies students, muddled agnostics, who didn't know which way was up, who were in the thrall of reason, that fool's gold for the bright reminded me of the three-toed sloth, and the three-toed sloth, such a beautiful example of the miracle life, reminded me of God. I never had problems with my fellow scientists. Scientists are a friendly, atheistic, hard-working, beer-drinking whose minds are preoccupied with sex, chess, and baseball when they are not preoccupied with science. I was a very good student, if I say so myself. I was tops at St. Michael's College 4 years in a row. I got every possible student award from the Department of Zoology. If I got none from the Department of Religious Studies, it is simply because there are no student awards in this department. Jeez. The rewards of religious study are not in mortal hands. We all know that. I would have received the Governor General's Academic Medal, the University of Toronto's highest undergraduate award, of which no small number of illustrious Canadians have been recipients, were it not for the beef-eating pink boy with a neck like a tree trunk and the temperament of unbearable good cheer. I still smart a little. Oh, what the heck? I need to scroll down anyways. I still smart a little at the slight when you stuffed a great deal in life. In life, each additional pain is both unbearable and trifling. My life is like a memento mori painting from European art. There is always a grinning skull on my side to remind me of the folly of human ambition. I mock the skull. I look at it and say, "You've got the wrong fellow. You may not believe in life, but I don't believe in death. Move on." The skull snickers and moves ever closer, but that does not surprise me. Okay. The reason death sticks so closely to life isn't biological necessity. It's envy. Life is so beautiful that death has fallen in love with it, a jealous, possessive love that grabs at what it can. But life leaps over oblivion, lightly losing only a thing or two of no importance, and gloom is but the passing shadow of a cloud. The pink boy also got the nod from the Rhodes Scholarship Committee. I love him, and I hope that his time at Oxford was a rich experience. If Lakshmi, goddess of wealth, one day favors me bountifully, Oxford is fifth on the list of cities I would like to visit before I pass on. After Mecca, Varanasi, Jerusalem, and Paris. I have nothing to say of my working life, only that the tie is a noose, and inverted though it is, I will hang a man nonetheless if he is not careful. I love Canada. I miss the heat of India, the food, the house blizzards on the walls, the musicals of the silver screen, the cows wandering the streets, the crows cawing, even the talk of cricket matches. But I love Canada. It is a great country, much too cold for good sense, inhabited by compassionate, intelligent people with bad hairdos. Anyways, I have nothing to go home to in Pondicherry. Richard Parker has stayed with me. I've never forgotten him. Dare I say I miss him? I do. I miss him. I still see him in my dreams. They are nightmares mostly, but nightmares tinged with love. Such is the strangeness of the human heart. I still cannot understand how he could abandon me so unceremoniously, without any sort of goodbye. Without looking back even once, that pain is like an axe that chops at my heart. The doctors and nurses at the hospital in Mexico were incredibly kind to me, and the patients too, victims of cancer or car accidents. Once they heard my story, they hobbled and wheeled over to see me. They and their families, though none of them spoke English, and I spoke no Spanish. They smiled at me, shook my hand, and patted me on the head, left gifts and food and clothing on my bed. They moved me to uncontrollable fits of laughing and crying. In a couple of days, I could stand and make 2-3 steps despite nausea, dizziness, and general weakness. Blood tests revealed that I was anemic and that my levels of sodium were high and my potassium was low. My body retained fluids and my legs swelled up tremendously. I looked as if I had been grafted with a pair of elephant legs. My urine was a deep, dark yellow going on to brown. After a week or so, I could walk just normally. I could wear shoes if I didn't lace them up. My skin healed, though I still have scars on my shoulders and back. The first time I turned a tap on, it was noisy, wasteful, super abundant gush was such a shock that I became incoherent and my legs collapsed beneath me and fainted in the arms of a nurse. The first time I went to an Indian restaurant in Canada, I used my fingers. The waiter looked at me critically and said, "Fresh off the boat, are you?" I blanched. My fingers, which a second before had been taste buds savoring the food a little ahead of my mouth, became dirty under his gaze. They froze like criminals caught in the act. I didn't dare lick them. I wiped them guiltily on my napkin. He had no idea how deeply those words wounded me. They were like nails being driven into my flesh. I picked up the knife and fork. I hardly ever used such instruments. My hands trembled. My sambar lost its taste. Okay, anyone chatting? Nope. Okay. Let me check here. Okay. Chapter 2. Okay. He lives in Scarborough. He's a small, slim man, no more than 5'5", dark hair, dark eyes, hair graying at the temples. Can't be older than 40. pleasing coffee-colored complexion. Mild fall weather, yet puts on a big winter parka with fur-lined boots for the walk to the diner. Expressive face, speaks quickly, hands flitting about. No small talk. He launches forth. Chapter 3. I was named after a swimming pool, quite peculiar considering my parents never took to water. One of my father's earliest business contacts was Francis Adurubazami. He became a good friend of the family. I called him Mama G, Mama being the Tamil word for uncle and G being a suffix used in India to indicate respectful affection. When he was a young man, long before I was born, Mama G was a champion competitive swimmer, the champion of all South India. Sorry. He looked the parts his whole life. My brother Ravi once told me that when Mama G was born, he didn't want to give up on breathing water, and so the doctor, to save his life, had to take him by the feet and swing him above his head, round and round. It did the trick, said Ravi, wildly spinning his hand above his head. He coughed the water and started breathing air, but it forced all his flesh and blood to his upper body. That's why his chest is so thick and his legs are so skinny. I believed him. Ravi was a merciless teaser. The first time he called Mamaji Mr. Fish to my face. I left a banana peel in his bed. Even in his 60s, when he was a little stewed and a lifetime of obstetric gravity had begun to nudge his flesh downwards, Mamaji swam 30 lengths every morning at the pool of the Aurobindo ashram. He tried to teach my parents to swim, but he never got them to go beyond wading up to their knees at the beach and making ludicrous round motions with their arms, which, if they were practicing the breaststroke, made which, if they were practicing the breaststroke, made them look as if they were walking through a jungle, spreading the tall grass ahead of them, or if it was the front crawl, as if they were running down a hill and flailing their arms so as not to fall. Ravi was just unenthusiastic. Mamaji had to wait until I came into the picture to find a willing disciple. Sorry. The day I came off swimming age, which to mother's distress, Mamaji claimed was 7, he brought me down to the beach, spread his arms seaward, and said, "This is my gift to you." Okay, let me see. This is my gift to you. "And then he nearly drowned you," claimed Mother. "I remained faithful to my aquatic guru. Under his watchful eye, I lay on the beach and fluttered my legs and scratched away at the sand with my hands, turning my head at every stroke to breathe. I must have looked like a child throwing a peculiar slow-motion tantrum in the water. As he held me at the surface, I tried my best to swim. It was much more difficult than on land, but Mamaji was patient and encouraging. When he left, I had progressed sufficiently. We turned our backs on the laughing and shouting and running and the splashing, the blue-green waves and the bubbly surf, and headed for the proper rectangularity and the formal flatness and the paying admission of the ashram swimming pool. Okay. I went there with him 3 times a week through my childhood, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday early morning ritual with the clockwork regularity of a good front crawl stroke. I have vivid memories of this dignified old man stripping down to nakedness next to me, his body slowly emerging as he neatly disposed of each item of clothing, decency being savage at the very end by a slight turning away a magnificent pair of imported athletic bathing trunks. He stood straight and he was ready. It had an epic simplicity. Swimming instruction, which in time became swimming practice, was grueling, but there was the deep pleasure of doing stroke with increasing ease and speed over and over, till hypnosis practically the water turning from molten lead to liquid light. It was on my own a guilty pleasure that I returned to the sea, beckoned by the mighty waves that crashed out and reached for me in humble tidal ripples, gentle lassos that caught their wheeling. Indian boy. My life to Mamaji one birthday, I must have been 13 or so, was two full lengths of credible butterfly. I finished so spent I could hardly wave to him. Beyond the activity of swimming, there was the talk of it. It was the talk that father loved. The more vigorously he resisted actually swimming, the more he fancied it. Swim lore was his vacation talk from the workday talk of running a zoo. Water without a hippopotamus was so much more manageable than water with one. Okay. Mamaji studied in Paris for 2 years thanks to the colonial administration. He had the time of his life. This was in the early 1930s when the French were still trying to make Pondicherry a Gaelic, as the British were trying to make the rest of India Britannic. I don't recall exactly what Mamaji studied, something commercial, I suppose. He was a great storyteller, but forgot about his studies or the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre or the cafes of the Champs-Élysées. All his stories had to do with swimming pools and swimming competitions. For example, there was a Piscine d'Eligny, the city's oldest pool, dated back to 1796, an open-air barge moored to the Quai d'Orsay, and the venue for the swimming events of the 1900 Olympics. But none of the times were recognized by the International Swimming Federation because the pool was 6 meters too long. The water in the pool became straight from the Seine, unfiltered and unheated. It was cold and dirty, said Mamaji. The water having crossed all of Paris came in foul enough. Then people at the pool made it utterly disgusting. In conspirational whispers, with shocking details to back up his claim, he assured us that the French had very low standards of personal hygiene. Melanie was bad enough. Brain Royal, another latrine on the Seine, was worse. At least at Deligny they scooped out the dead fish. Nevertheless, an Olympic pool is an Olympic pool, touched by immortal glory. Though it was a cesspool, Mamaji spoke of Deligny with a fond smile. Okay. One was better off at the Piscines, Chateau London, Roubaix, or du Boulevard de la Gare. They were indoor pools with roofs on land and open year-round. Their water was supplied by the condensation from steam engines from nearby factories, and so was cleaner and warmer. But the pools there were a little bit dingy and tended to be crowded. There was so much gob and spit floating from the water, I thought I was swimming through jellyfish, chuckled Mamaji. The piscines Hebert, that drew Volant and Boot Oxcaye. Well, these are all French words. Were bright, modern, spacious pools fed by artisan wells. They set the standard for excellence in municipal swimming pools. There was the Piscine de Touré, of course, the city's other great Olympic pool, inaugurated through the Second Paris Games in 1924. And there were still others, many of them, but no swimming pool in Mamaji's eyes matched the glory of the Piscine Molitor. It was the crowning aquatic glory of Paris, indeed of the entire civilized world. It was a pool the gods would have delighted to swim in. Molitor had the best competitive swimming club in Paris. There were two pools, an indoor and an outdoor. Both were as big as small oceans. The indoor pool always had two lanes reserved for swimmers who wanted to do lanes. The water was so clean and clear you could have used it to make morning coffee. Wooden changing cabins, blue and white, surrounded the pool on two floors. You could look down and see everyone and everything. The porters who marked your cabin door with chalk to show it was occupied were limping old men, friendly in an ill-tempered way. No amount of shouting and tomfoolery ever ruffled them. The showers gushed hot, soothing water. There was a steam room and an exercise room. The outside pool became a skating rink in winter. Okay. There was a bar, a steam. Oops. Where was I reading? Okay, hold on. There was a bar, a cafeteria, a large stunning deck, even two small beaches with real sand. Every bit of tile, brass, and wood gleamed. It was the only pool that made Mama G fall silent. His memory making too many links to mention. Mama G remembered Father Dream. That is how I got my name when I entered this world. A last welcome addition to my family. 3 years after Ravi Pisin Molitor Patel. Chapter 4. Our good old nation was just 7 years old as a republic when it became bigger by a small territory. Pondicherry entered the Union of India on November 1st, 1954. Our civic achievement called for another. A portion of the ground of the Pondicherry Botanical Garden was made available rent-free for an exciting business opportunity. And lo and behold, India had a brand new zoo designed and run according to the most biological sound principles. It was a huge zoo spread over numberless acres, big enough to require a train to explore it. Though it seemed to get smaller as I grew older, train included. Now it's so small it fits my head. You must imagine a hot and humid place, bathed in sunshine and bright colors. The ride of flowers is incessant, and there are trees, shrubs, and climbing plants in profusion. Peoples, gulmehers, flames of the forest, red silk cottons, jacarandas, mangoes, jackfruits, and many other that would remain unknown remain unknown to you if they didn't have neat labels at their feet. At their feet. There are benches. Okay. There are benches. Of these benches, you see men sleeping, stretched out, or couples sitting, young couples who steal glances at each other shyly, and whose hands flutter in the air, happen to touch. Suddenly, amidst the tall and slim trees up ahead, you notice two giraffes quietly observing you. The sight is not the last of your surprises. The next moment, you are startled by a furious outburst coming from a great troop of monkeys, only outdone by volume by their shrill cries of strange birds. You come to a turnstile. You distractedly pay a small sum of money. You move on. You see a low wall. What can you expect beyond a low wall? Certainly not a shallow pit with two mighty Indian rhinoceros. But that is what you find. And when you turn your head to see the elephant that was there all along, so big you didn't notice it, and all the pond and in the pond you realize those are hippopotamuses floating in the water. The more you look, the more you see. You're in Zoo Town. Okay. Before moving to Pondicherry, Father ran a large hotel in Madras. An abiding interest in animals led them to the zoo business. A natural transition, you might think, from hotel keeping to zoo keeping. Not so. In many ways, running a zoo is a hotel keeper's worst nightmare. Consider the guests never leave their rooms. They expect not only lodging but full board. They receive a constant flow of visitors, some of whom are noisy and unruly. One had to wait until they sauntered to their balconies, so to speak, before one can clean their rooms, and then one has to wait until they tire of the view and return to their rooms before one can clean their balconies. And there is much cleaning to do. For the guests are as unhygienic as alcoholics. Each guest is very particular about his or her diet, constantly complain constantly complains about their slowness of the service and never ever tips. To speak frankly, many are sexual deviants, either terribly repressed and subject to explosions or of frenzied lasciviousness or openly depraved. In either case, regularly affronting management with gross outages of free sex and incest. Where am I? Oh, right here. Okay. Are these sorts of guests you would want to welcome to your inn? The Pondicherry Zoo was the source of some pleasure and many headaches for Mr. Santosh Patel, founder, owner, director, head to a staff of 53, and my father. Okay, no one chatting. All right. To me, it was paradise on earth. I have nothing but the fondest memories of growing up in a zoo. I lived my life of a prince. What Maharaja's son had such vast luxuriant grounds to play about. What palace had such a menagerie? My alarm clock during my childhood was a pride of lions. There were no Swiss clocks, but the lions could have counted upon the roar of their heads off between 5:30 and 6 every morning. Breakfast was punctuated by the shrieks and cries of howler monkeys, hill mynas, and Moluccan cockatoos. I left for school under the benevolent gaze, not only of mother, but also of bright-eyed otters and burly American bison and stretching and yawning orangutans. I looked up as I ran under some trees, otherwise peafowl might excrete on me. Better to go by the trees that sheltered the large colonies of fruit bats. The only assault there at that early hour was the bats' discordant concerns of squeaking and chattering. On my way out, I might have stopped by the terraria to look at some shiny frogs, glazed bright green, or yellow and deep blue, or brown and pale green, or it might be birds that caught my attention, pink flamingos, or black swans, or one wattled cassowaries, or something smaller, silver diamond doves, Cape glossy starlings, peach-faced lovebirds, Nande, Connors, orange-fronted parakeets, not likely that the elephants, the seals, or the big cats or the bears would be updoing, but the baboons, the macaques, the mangabeys, the gibbons, the deer, the tapirs, the llamas, the giraffes, the mongoose were early risers. Every morning before I was out on the main gate, I had one impression that was both ordinary and forgettable: the pyramid of turtles, the iridescent snout of mandrill. Okay, hold on. Oh, okay, I'm here. Sorry, I lost where I was. The stately science of a giraffe, the obese yellow open mouth of a hippo, the beak and claw clapping of a macaw parrot up a wire fence, the greeting claps of a shoebill, the senile lecherous expression of a camel, and all these riches were had quickly as I hurried to school. It was after school that I discovered in a leisurely way what it's like to have an elephant search for your clothes in the friendly hope of finding a hidden nut or an orangutan pig through your hair for tick snacks. Its wheeze of disappointment at what an empty pantry your head is. I wish I could convey the perfection of seal slipping into water or a spider monkey swinging from point to point or a lion merely turning its head, but language founders in such seas better to picture it in your head if you want to feel it. In zoos, as in nature, the best times to visit are sunrise and sunset. That is when most animals come to life. They stir and leave their shelter and tiptoe to the water's edge. They show their remnants or their raiments. They sing their songs. They turn to each other and perform their rites. The reward for the watching eye and the listening ear is great. I spend more hours than I can count a quiet witness to the highly mannered, manifold expressions of life that grace our planet. It is something so bright, loud, and weird and delicate as to stupefy their senses. I have heard nearly as much nonsense about zoos as I have about God and religion, well-meaning but misinformed. People think that animals in the wild are happy because they are free. These people usually have a large, handsome predator in mind, a lion or a cheetah. The life of a gnu or of an aardvark is rarely exalted. They imagine this wild animal rolling about the savannah or digestive walks after eating a prey that accepted its lot piously, piously, or going for calisthenic runs to stay slim after overindulging. They imagine this animal overseeing its offspring proudly and tenderly. The whole family watching the settings of the sun from the limbs of trees with sighs of pleasure. The life of the wild animal is simple, noble, and meaningful. They imagine then then it is captured by wicked men and thrown into any jails. Its happiness is dashed. It yearns mightily for freedom and does all it can to escape. Being denied its freedom for too long, the animal becomes a shadow of itself, its spirit broken, so some people imagine. This is not the way it is. Animals in the wild lead lives of compulsion and necessity within an unforgiving social hierarchy in an environment where the supply of fear is high and the supply of food is low, and where territory it must consistently be defended and parasites forever endured. What is the meaning of freedom in such context? Animals in the wild are in practice free neither in space nor in time, nor in their personal relations. In theory, that is as proper to the species, but an event is less likely to happen than for a member of our own species, say a shopkeeper with the usual ties to family, to friends, to society, to drop everything and walk away from his life with only the spare change in his pockets and the clothes on his frame. If a man boldest and most intelligent of creatures won't wander from place to place, a stranger to all, beholden to none, why would an even say reactionary why would an animal which is by temperament far more conservative, for that is what animals are, conservative, one might even say reactionary. The smallest change can upset them. They want things to be just so, day after day, month after month. Surprises are highly disagreeable to them. You see, this is their spatial relations. An animal inhabits its space, whether in a zoo or in the wild, in the same way that chess pieces move about a chessboard significantly. There's no more happenstance, no more freedom involved in the whereabouts of a lizard or a bear or a deer than the location of a knight on a chessboard. Both speak of pattern and purpose. In the wild, animals stick to the same paths for the same pressing reasons. Season after season in a zoo, if an animal is not in its normal place, in its regular posture at the usual hour, it means something. It may be the reflection of nothing more than a minor change in its environment. A coiled hose let out by a keeper has made a menacing impression. A puddle has formed that bothers the animal. A ladder is making a shadow, but it could mean something more. At its worst, it could be that most dreaded thing to a zoo director, a symptom. A herald of troublesome to come, reason to inspect the dung, to cross-examine the keeper, to summon the vet, all this because the stork is not standing where it usually stands. But let me pursue for a moment only one aspect of the question. If you want to go home, kick down the front door, chase the people who live there out into the street, and said, "Go, you are free. Free as a bird. Go, go." Do you think they would shout and dance for joy? They wouldn't. Birds are not free. The people you've just evicted would sputter. "With what right do you throw us out? This is our home. We own it. We have lived here for years. We're calling the police, you scoundrel." Don't we say there's no place like home? That's certainly what animals feel. Animals are territorial. That is the key to their minds. Only a familiar territory will allow them to fill the two relentless imperatives of the cage. Pit, moated, island, coral, terrarium, aviary, or aquarium is just another territory. Peculiar only in its size and its proximity to human territory, that it is so much smaller than what it would be in nature stands to reason. Territories in the wild are large not as a matter of taste but necessity. In a zoo we do for animals what we have done to ourselves with houses. We bring together in a small space what in the wild is spread out. Whereas before for us the cave was here. The river over there, the hunting grounds a mile that way, the lookout next to it, the berries somewhere else, all of them infested with lions, snakes, ants, leeches, and poison ivy. Now the river flows through taps at hand's reach, and we can wash next to where we slept. We can eat where we have cooked, and we can surround the whole with a protective wall and keep it clean and warm. A house is compressed territory where our basic needs can be fulfilled close by and safely. A sound zoo enclosure is the equivalent for an animal, with the noteworthy absence of fireplace or the like present in every human habitation. Finding within it all the places it needs, a lookout, a place for resting, for eating and drinking, for bathing and grooming, etc., and finding that there is no need to go hunting. Food appearing 6 days a week, an animal will take possession of its zoo space in the same way it would lay claim to a new space in the wild, exploring it and marking it out in the normal ways of its species. And sprays of urine perhaps. Once this moving in ritual is done and the animal is settled, it will not feel like a nervous tenant, and even less like a prisoner, but rather like a landholder, and it would behave the same way within an enclosure as it would in its territory in the wild, including defending its tooth and nails should it be invaded. Such an enclosure is subjectively neither better nor worse for an animal than its condition in the wild. Such an enclosure is subjectively neither better nor worse for an animal than its condition in the wild, so long as it fulfills the animal's needs. A territory, natural or constructed, simply is, without judgment, a given like the spots on a zoo. Since the major difference between a zoo and the wild is the absence of parasites and enemies, and the abundance of food in the first and their respective abundance and scarcity in the second. Think about it yourself. Would you rather put up at the Ritz with free room service and unlimited access to a doctor, or be homeless without a soul to care for you? But animals are incapable of such discernment. With the limits of their nature, they make do with what they have. A good zoo is a place of carefully worked out coincidence. A good zoo is a place of A good zoo is a place of carefully worked out coincidence, exactly where the animal says to us, "Stay out." With its urine or other secretion, we say to it, "Stay in," with our barriers. Under such conditions, diplomatic peace, all animals are content, and we can relax and have a look at each other. In the literature can be found legions of examples of animals that could escape but did not, or did and returned. There is the case of the chimpanzee whose cage door was left unlocked and had swung open. Increasingly anxious, the chimp began to shriek and to slam the door shut repeatedly with a deafening clang each time until the keeper, notified by a visitor, hurried over to remedy the situation. A herd of roe deer in a European zoo stepped out of their corral when the gate was left open. Frightened by visitors, the deer bolted for the nearby forest, which had its own herd of wild roe deer and could support more. Nonetheless, the roe deer quickly returned to their corral. In another zoo, a worker was walking to his work site at an early hour carrying planks of wood, when to his horror a bear emerged from the morning mist, heading straight for him at a confident pace. The man dropped the planks and ran for his life. The zoo staff immediately started searching for the escaped bear. They found it back in its enclosure, having climbed down to the pit the way it had climbed out. By the way of a tree that had fallen over, it was thought that the noise of the planks of wood falling to the ground had frightened it. But I don't insist. I don't mean to defend zoos. Close them all down if you want. Let us hope that what wildlife remains can survive in what is left of the natural world. I know zoos are no longer in people's good graces. Religion faces the same problem. Certain illusions about freedom plague them both. The Pondicherry Zoo doesn't exist anymore. Its pits are filled, the cages torn down. I explore it now in the only place left for it, my memory. Chapter 5. My name isn't the end of the story about my name. When your name is Bob, no one asks you, how do you spell that? Not so with Piscine, Molitor, Patel. Some thought it was P. Singh, and that I was sick, and they wondered why I wasn't wearing a turban. In my university days, I visited Montreal once with some friends. It fell to me to order pizzas one night. I could bear to have yet another French speaker guffawing at my name. So when the man on the phone asked, "Can I have your name?" I said, "I am who I am." Half an hour later, 2 pizzas arrived for Ian Houlihan. It is true that those we meet can change us, sometimes so profoundly that we are not the same afterwards, even unto our names. Witness Simon, who is called Peter; Matthew, who is known as Levi; Nathanael, who is also Bartholomew; Judas, not Iscariot, who took the name Thaddeus; Simeon, who went by Niger; Saul, who became Paul. My Roman soldier stood in the schoolyard one morning when I was 12. I had just arrived. He saw me, and a flash of evil genius lit up his dull mind. He raised his arms, pointed at me and shouted, "It's pissing Patel!" In a second, everyone was laughing. It fell away as we filed into the class. I walked in last, wearing my crown of thorns. The cruelty of children comes as news to no one. The words would waft across the yard to my ears, unprovoked, uncalled for. "Where's pissing? I've got to go." Or, "You're facing the wall, are you pissing?" Or something of the sort. I would freeze or the contrary pursue my activity, pretending not to have heard. The sound would disappear, but the hurt the hurt would linger, like the smell of piss long after it's been evaporated. Teachers started doing it too. It was the heat. As the day wore on, the geography lesson, which in the morning had been as compact as the oasis, started to stretch out like the Thar Desert. The history lesson, so alive when the day was young, became parched and dusty. The mathematics lesson, so precise at first, became muddled. In their afternoon fatigue, as they wiped their foreheads and the backs of their necks with their handkerchiefs, without meaning to offend or get a laugh, even, teachers forgot the fresh aquatic promise of my name, and distorted it in a shameful way. By nearly imperceptible modulation, I could hear the change. It was as if their tongues were charioteers driving wild horses. They could manage well enough the first syllable, the P, but eventually the heat was too much that they lost control of their frothy-mounted steeds, and they could no longer rein them in for the climb to the second syllable, the C. Instead, they plunged hell-bent into sing, and next time round all was lost. My hand would be up to give an answer, and J would be acknowledged with a yes, pissing. Often the teacher would realize what he had just called me. He would look at me wearily. After a moment, wondering why I wasn't coming. Cut? Ooh. Cut, and then there's this error right here. The answer. And sometimes the class has been down by the heat, and he wouldn't react either, not a snicker or a smile. But I always heard the slur. I spent my last year at St. Joseph's School feeling like the persecuted Prophet Muhammad in Mecca, peace be upon him. But just as he planned his flight to Medina, the Hijra that would mark the beginning of Muslim time, I planned my escape and the beginning of a new time for me. After St. Joseph's, I went to Petit Seminaire, the best private English medium secondary school in Pondicherry. Ravi was already there, and like all younger brothers, I would suffer from following in the footsteps of a popular older sibling. He was the athlete of his generation at Petit Seminaire, a fearsome bowler and a powerful batter, the captain of the town's best cricket team. Our very own Kapil Dev, that I was a swimmer, made no waves. It seems to be a law of human nature that those who live in the sea are suspicious of swimmers, and those who live in the mountains are suspicious of mountain climbers. The following in someone's shadow wasn't my escape, although I would have taken my name over pissing even Ravi's brother. I had a better plan than that. I put it to execution on the first day of school in the very first class. Around me were other alumni of St. Joseph's. The class started the way all new classes start. We start with the stating of names. We called them out from our desks in the order in which was happening to be sitting. Okay, I'm gonna butcher some of these names. Ganapathy Kumar said Ganapathy Kumar. Vipin Nath said Vipin Nath. Shamshul Huda said Shamshul Huda. Peter Dar Maraj said Peter Dar Maraj. Each name elicited elicited a tick on a list of and a brief oh shoot and a brief mnemonic stare from the teacher. I was terribly nervous. Ajit Gyatson said Ajit Gyatson 4 desks away. Sampath Saroja said Sampath Saroja 3 feet away. Stanley Kumar said Stanley Kumar 2 feet away. Oh, two away. Okay, three away, two away. Sylvester Naveen said Sylvester Naveen right in front of me. It was my turn. Time to put down Satan. Medina, here I come. I got up from my desk and hurried to the blackboard. Before the teacher could say a word, I picked up a piece of chalk and said as I wrote, "My name is Piscine Molitor Patel. Known to all as I double underlined the first two of my given name, Pi Patel. For good measure, I added pi equals 3.14. I drew a large circle, which I then sliced in two with a diameter to evoke that basic lesson of geometry. There was silence. The teacher was staring at the board. I was holding my breath. He said, "Very well, Pi. Sit down. Next time you'll ask permission before leaving your desk." "Yes, sir." He ticked my name off, and I looked at the next boy. "Mansoor Ahmed," said Mansoor Ahmed. I was saved. "Gautam Selvaraj," said Gautam Selvaraj. I could breathe. "Arun Anaji," said Arun Anaji. "A new beginning." Okay. A new beginning. I repeated the stunt with every teacher. Repetition is important in the training not only of animals but also of humans. Between one commonly named boy and the next, I rushed forward and emblazoned something with a terrible screech, the details of my rebirth. I got to be that after a few times the boys sang along with me. A crescendo that climaxed after a quick intake of air while I underlined the proper note, which such a rousing rendition of my new name. It would have been the delight of any choir master. A few boys followed up with a whispered urgent 3.14. As I wrote as fast as I could, I ended the concert by slicing the circle with such vigor that the bits of chalk went flying. When I put my hand up that day, which I did every chance I had, teachers granted me the right to speak with a single syllable that was music to my ears. Students followed suit, even the St. Joseph's Devils. In fact, the name caught on. Truly, we are a nation of aspiring engineers. Shortly after, there was a boy named Om Prakash who was calling himself Omega, and another who was passing himself as Upsilon, and for a while there was a Gamma, a Lambda, and a Delta. But I was the first and most enduring of the Greeks as Petit Seminaire. Even my brother, the captain of the cricket team, that local god approved. He took me aside the next week. "What's this about a nickname you have?" he said. I kept silent because whatever mocking was to come, there was no avoiding it. "I didn't realize you liked the color yellow so much." "The color yellow?" I looked around. No one was to hear what he was about to say, especially not one of his lackeys. "Robbie, what do you mean?" I whispered. "It's all right with me, brother. Anything better than pissing, even lemon pie." As he sauntered away, he smiled and said, "You look a bit red in the face," but he held his peace. And so in that Greek letter that looks like a shack with a corrugated tin roof, in that elusive irrational number with which scientists try to understand the universe, I found refuge. He's an excellent cook. His overheated house was always smelling of something delicious. Oh, this is chapter 6. His spice rack looks like an apothecary's shop. When he opened his refrigerator or his cupboards, there were many brand names I don't recognize. In fact, I can't even tell what language they're in. We are in India, but he handles Western dishes equally well. He makes the most zesty yet subtle macaroni and cheese I've ever had, and his vegetarian tacos would be the envy of all Mexico. I noticed something else. His cupboards are jam-packed. Behind every door and every shelf stand mountain of neatly stacked cans and packages. A reserve food to the last siege of Leningrad. Okay, chapter 7. We'll check the chat. Check here. Okay. It was my luck to have a few good teachers in my youth, men and women who came into my dark head and lit a match. One of these was Mr. Satish Kumar, a biology teacher at Petit Seminaire and an active communist, who was always hoping Tamil Nadu would help electing movie stars and go the way of Kerala. He had a most peculiar appearance. On top of his head was bald and pointy, yet he had the most impressive jowls I have ever seen, and his narrow shoulders gave way to a massive stomach that looked like a base of a mountain, except that the mountain stood in thin air, for it stopped abruptly and disappeared horizontally into his pants. It's a mystery to me how his stick-like legs supported his weight above them, but they did, though they moved in surprising ways at times, as if his knees could bend in any direction. His construction was geometric. He looked like two triangles, a small one and a larger one, balanced on two parallel lines. But organic, quite wordy actually, and with his sprigs of black hair sticking out his ears and friendly, his smile seemed to take up the whole base of his triangular head. Mr. Kumar was the first avowed atheist I've ever met. I discovered this not in the classroom but at the zoo. He was a regular visitor who read the labels and descriptive notices in their entirety and approved of every animal he saw. Each to him was a triumph of logic and mechanics, and nature as a whole was an exceptionally fine illustration of science. To its ears, when the animal felt urged to mate, it said, Gregor Mendel, we're calling the father of genetics. And when it was time to show his medal, Charles Darwin, the father of natural selection. And what we took to be bleating, grunting, hissing, snorting, roaring, growling, howling, chirping, and screeching were but the thick accents of foreigners. When Mr. Kumar visited the zoo, it was the pulse of the universe, and his stethoscopic mind always. I confirmed to him that everything was in order. That everything was order. He left the zoo feeling scientifically refreshed. The first time I saw his triangular form teetering and tottering about the zoo, I was shy to approach him. As much as I liked him as a teacher, he was a figure of authority and I a subject. I was a little afraid of him. I observed him at a distance. He had just come from the rhinoceros pit. The two Indian rhinos were great attractions at the zoo because of the goats. Rhinos are social animals, and when they got peak, a young wild male, he was showing signs of suffering from isolation, and he was eating less and less as a stopgap measure while he searched for a female. Father thought of seeing if Peak would be accustomed to living with goats. If it worked, it would save a valuable animal. If it didn't, it would only cost a few goats. It would marvelously peak, and the herd of goats became inseparable even when Summit arrived. Now when the rhinos bathed, the goats stood around the muddy pool, and when the goats ate in the corner, Peak and Summit stood next to them like guards. The living arrangement was very popular with the public. Mr. Kumar looked up and saw me. He smiled, and one hand holding onto the railing the other waving, signaling to come over. "Hello, Pi," he said. "Hello, sir. It's good of you to come to the zoo. I come here all the time. One might say it's my temple. This is interesting." He was indicating the pit. "If we had politicians like these goats and rhinos, we'd have fewer problems in our country. Unfortunately, we have a prime minister who has the armor plating of a rhinoceros without any of its good sense." I didn't know much about politics. Father and mother complained regularly about Mrs. Gandhi, but it meant little to me. She lived far away in the north, and not at the zoo, not in Pondicherry. But I felt I had to say something. "Religion will save us," I said. Since when I could remember, religion had always been close to my heart. "Religion?" Mr. Kumar grinned broadly. "I don't believe in religion. Religion is darkness." "Darkness?" I was puzzled. I thought darkness was the last thing religion is. Religion is light. Was he testing me? Was he saying religion is darkness, the way he sometimes said in class things like, "Mammals lay eggs," to see if someone would correct him? "Only platypuses, sir." There are no grounds for going beyond a scientific explanation of reality, and no sound reason for believing anything but our sense experience. A clear intellect, close attention to detail, and a little scientific knowledge will expose religion as superstitious bosh. God does not exist. Did he say that, or am I remembering the lines of later atheists? At any rate, it was something of the sort. I had never heard such words. "Why tolerate darkness? Everything is here and clear, if only we look carefully." He was pointing at Peak. Now, though I had great admiration for Peak, I had never thought of a rhinoceros as a light bulb. He spoke once again. "Some people say God died during the partition in 1947. He may have died in 1971 during the war, or he may have died yesterday here in Pondicherry in an orphanage. That's what some people say, Pi. When I was your age, I lived in bed, racked with polio. I asked myself every day, where is God? Where is God? Where is God? God never came. It wasn't God who saved me. It was medicine. Reason it in my prophet, and it tells me that a watch stops." Oh. Hold on. I need to... Okay. Sorry, I needed to turn myself on again. Okay, no comments. Okay, this is good. Okay. God never came. It wasn't God who saved me, as it was medicine. Reason is my prophet, and it tells me that as a watch stops, so we die. It's the end. If the watch doesn't work properly, it must be fixed here and now by us. One day it will take hold of the means of production, and there will be justice on earth. This was all a bit much for me. The tone was very loving and brave, but the details seemed bleak. Aw. Okay, I don't know why, VTube Studio likes to stop. Okay, this was all a bit much for me. The tone was right, loving, and brave, but the details seemed bleak. I said nothing. It wasn't for fear of angering Mr. Kumar. I was more afraid that in a few words thrown he might destroy something that I had loved. What if his words had the effect of polio on me? What a terrible disease that must be if it could kill God in a man. He walked up, pitching and rolling in the wild sea that was steady ground. Don't forget the test on Tuesday. Study hard, 3.14. Yes, Mr. Kumar. He became my favorite teacher at Petit Seminaire, and the reason I studied zoology at the University of Toronto. I felt a kinship with him. It was my first clue that atheists are my brothers and sisters of a different faith. And every word they kept, and every word they speak speaks of faith. Like me, they go as far as the legs of reason will carry them, and then they leap. I'll be honest about it. It's not atheists who get stuck in any crawl, but agnostics is, doubt is useful. Doubt is useful for a while. We must all pass through the garden of Gethsemane. If Christ plays with doubt, so must we. If Christ spent an anguished night in prayer, we burst out from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? Then surely we are permitted doubt, but we must move on. To choose doubt as a philosophy of life is akin to choosing immobility as a means of transportation. Chapter 8. We calmly say in the trade that the most dangerous animal in a zoo is man. In a general way, we mean how our species' excessive predatoriness has made the entire planet our prey. More specifically, we have in mind the people who feed fishhooks to the otters, razors to the bears, apples and small nails in them to the elephants, and hardware variations. On theme: ballpoint pens, paper clips, safety pins, rubber bands, combs, coffee spoons, horseshoes, pieces of broken glass, rings, brooches, and other jewelry, and not just cheap plastic bangles, gold wedding bands to drinking straws, plastic cutlery, ping pong balls, tennis balls, and so on. The obituary of zoo animals that have died from being fed foreign bodies would make gorillas, bison, storks, rhees, ostriches, seals, sea lions, big cats, bears, camels, elephants, monkeys, and most every variety of deer, ruminant, and songbird. Among zookeepers, Goliath's death is famous. When he was a bull elephant seal, a great big vulnerable beast of 2 tons, star of his European zoo, loved all by visitors. He died of internal bleeding after some fed him a broken beer bottle. The cruelty is often more active and direct. The literature contains sports and many torments inflicted upon zoo animals. A shoebill dying of shock after having its beak smashed with a hammer, a moose stag losing its beard, along with a strip of flesh the size of an index finger to a visitor's knife. The same moose was poisoned 6 months later. A monkey arm broken after reaching out for proffered nuts. A deer's antlers attacked with a hacksaw. A zebra stabbed with a sword. And other assaults on other animals with walking sticks, umbrellas, hairpins, knitting needles, scissors, and whatnot, often with an aim to taking an eye out or to injuring sexual parts. Animals are also poisoned, and there are and there are indecencies even more bizarre. Onanists breaking a sweat on monkeys, ponies, birds, a religious freak who cut a snake's head off, a deranged man who took to urinating in an elk's mouth. At Pondicherry, we are relatively fortunate. We were spared the saddest who plied European and American zoos. Nonetheless, our gold agouti vanished. Stolen by someone who ate it. Father suspected. Various birds, pheasants, peacocks, macaws lost. Feathers to people greedy for their beauty. We caught a man with a knife climbing to the pen for a mouse deer. He said he was going to punish evil Ravana, who is in the Ramayana took the form of a deer when he kidnapped Sita, Rama's consort. Another was nabbed in the process of stealing a cobra. He was a snake charmer whose own snake had died. Both were saved, the cobra from life of servitude and bad music, and the man from a possible death bite. We had to deal on occasion with stone throwers who found the animals too placid and wanted a reaction. And we had the lady whose sari was caught by a lion. Hold on. Bad music. Stone throwers have found the animals took. Okay. Uh, she spun like a yo-yo, choosing mortal embarrassment over mortal end. The thing was, it wasn't even an accident. She had leaned over, thrust her hand in the cage, and waved the hand of her sari on the lion's face. With what intent we never figured out. She was not injured. There were many fascinated men who came to her assistance. Her flustered explanation to father was, "Whoever heard of a lion eating a con sari? I thought lions were carnivores. Our worst troublemakers were the visitors who gave food to the animals. Despite our vigilance, Dr. Attal, the zoo veterinarian, could tell by the number of animals with digestive disturbances, which had been the busy days at the zoo. He called tidbititis. The case of enteritis or enteritis or gastritis due to many carbohydrates, especially sugar. Sometimes we wish people had stuck to sweets. People have a notion that animals can eat anything without the least consequence to their health. Not so. One of our sloth bears became seriously ill with severe hemorrhagic enteritis after being given fish that had gone putrid by a man who was convinced he was doing a good deed. Just beyond the ticket booth, father had painted a wall in bright letters the question, "Do you know which is the most dangerous animals in the zoo?" An arrow pointed to a small curtain. There were so many eager, curious hands and that pulled the curtain that we had to replace it regularly. Behind it was a mirror. But I learned in my experience that father believed that there was another animal even more dangerous than us, and that was extremely common too, found on every continent, in every habitat, the redoubtable species, Animalis oh god, Animalis anthropomorphicus, the animal as seen through the human eye. We've all met one, perhaps owned one. It is the animal that is cute, friendly, loving, devoted, merry, understanding. These animals lie in ambush in every toy store and children's zoo. Countless stories are told of them. They are the pendants of those vicious, bloodthirsty, depraved animals that inflame the ire of the maniacs. I have just mentioned who vent their spite on them while walking sticks and umbrellas. In both cases, we look at an animal and see a mirror. The obsession with putting ourselves at the center of everything is the bane not only of theologians but also of zoologists. I learned the lesson that an animal is an animal, essentially and practically removed from us twice, once with father and once with Richard Parker. It was on a Sunday morning. I was quietly playing on my own. Father called out, "Children, come here." Something was wrong. His tone of voice was set off a small alarm in my head. I quickly reviewed my conscience. It was clear. Robbie must be in trouble again. I wondered what he had done this time. I walked into the living room. Mother was there. That was unusual. The disciplining of children like the tending of animals was generally left to father. Robbie was in last, guilt written all over his criminal face. Robbie Piscine. Or Piscine? I guess that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure. "I have a very important lesson for you today." "Oh, really? Is this necessary?" interrupted mother. Her face was flushed. I swallowed. If mother, normally so unruffled, so calm and worried, even upset, it meant we were in serious trouble. I exchanged glances with Robbie. "Yes, it is," said father, annoyed. "It may very well save our lives." Save our lives? It was no longer a small alarm bell that was ringing in my head. They were big bells now, like the ones heard from Sacred Heart of Jesus Church, not from the zoo. "But Basine, he's only 8, mother insisted. He's the one who worries me the most." "I'm innocent," I burst out. "It's Robbie's fault. Whatever it is, he did it. What, said Ravi, I haven't done anything wrong. He gave me the evil eye. Shush, said father, raising his hand. He looked at mother. Rita, you've seen Pacing. He's at the age when boys run around and poke their noses everywhere. Me, a run-arounder and everywhere nose poker? Not so, not so. Defend me, mother, defend me. I implored in my heart. But she only still sighed and nodded, a signal that the terrible business could proceed. Come with me, said father. We set out like prisoners to their execution. We left the house, went through the gate, entered the zoo. It was early and the zoo hadn't opened yet to the public. Animal keepers and groundkeepers were going by their work. I noticed Sid Tram, who oversaw the orangutans, my favorite keeper. He paused to watch us go by. We passed birds, bears, apes, monkeys, ungulates, and terrarium houses, the rhinos and elephants, the giraffes. We came to the big cats, our tigers, lions, and leopards. Babu, their keeper, was waiting for us. We went round and down the path, he unlocked the door to the cat house, which was at the center of a moated island. We entered. It was a vast and dim cement cavern, circular in shape, warm and humid, and smelled of cat urine. All around the gray cages, divided by thick green iron bars, a yellowish light filtered down from the skylights. Though through the cage exits, we could see the vegetation and the surrounding island flooded with sunlight. The cages were empty, save one. Mahisha, our Bengal tiger, patriarch, a lanky, hulking beast of 550 pounds, had been detained as soon as we stepped in. He loped up to the bars of his cage and set off a full-throated snarl, ears flat against his skull and round eyes fixed on Babu. The sound was so loud and fierce it seemed to shake the whole cat house. My knees started quaking, but I got close to mother. She was trembling too. Even father seemed to pause and steady himself. Only Babu was indifferent to the outburst and the searing stare that bored him like a drill. He had a tested trust in iron bars. Mahisha started pacing to and fro against the limits of his cage. Father turned to us. What animal is this? He bellowed above Mahisha, snarling. It's a tiger. Rafi and I answered in unison, obediently pointing to the blindingly obvious. Are tigers dangerous? Yes, father. Tigers are dangerous. Tigers are very dangerous, father shouted. If you want to understand that you are never under any circumstances to touch a tiger, to pet a tiger, to put your hands through the bars of a cage, and to get close to a cage. Is that clear, Ravi? Ravi nodded vigorously. Paisina nodded even more vigorously. He kept his eyes on me. I nodded so hard I'm surprised my neck didn't snap and my head fell to the floor. See, where's the next chapter? Okay, so page 23 of this PDF. I would like to say in my defense that though I have anthropomorphized the animals till they spoke fluent English, the pheasants completely in ebony British accents through their tea being cold, and their baboons planning their bank robbery getaway in the flat, menacing tones of American gangsters. The fancy was always conscious. I quite deliberately dressed wild animals in the same costumes of my imagination, but I never deluded myself to the real nature of my playmates. My poking nose had more sense than that. I don't know where father got the idea that his youngest son was itching to step into a cage with a ferocious carnivore, but wherever the strange worry came from, and father was a warrior, he was clearly determined to rid himself of it that very morning. I'm going to show you how dangerous tigers are, he continued. I want to remember this lesson for the rest of your lives. He turned to Babu and nodded. Babu leapt. Malahisha's eyes followed him and did not move from the door he disappeared through. He returned a few seconds later, carrying a goat with with his legs tied. Mother gripped me from behind. Mahisha's snarl turned into a growl deep in the throat. Babu unlocked, opened, entered, closed, and locked the cage next to the tiger's cage. Bars in the trapdoor separated the two. Immediately, Mahisha was up against the dividing bars, pawing them. To his growling, he now added explosive, arrested woofs. Babu placed the goat on the floor. His flanks were heaving violently. His tongue hung from the mouth, and his eyes were spitting orbs. He untied his legs. The goat got to its feet. Babu exited the cage in the same careful way he had entered it. The cage had 2 floors, one level with us, the other at its back, higher by about 3 feet, that led to the island. The goat scrambled to the second level. Mahisha, now unconcerned with Babu, paralleled the move in his cage in a fluid, effortless motion. He crouched and lay still, his slowly moving tail the only sign of tension. Babu stepped up to the trapdoor between the cages and started pulling it open. In anticipation of satisfaction, Mahisha fell silent. I heard 2 things that moment. Father saying, "Never forget this lesson," as he looked on grimly, and the bleating of the goat. It must have been bleeding all along. Only we couldn't hear it before. I could feel Mother's hands pressed against my pounding heart. The trapdoor resisted with sharp cries. Mahisha was beside himself. He looked as if he were about to burst through the bars. He seemed to hesitate between staying where he was, at the place where his prey was closest, but most certainly out of reach, and moving the ground level further away, but where the trapdoor was located. He raised himself and started snarling again. The goat started to jump up. It jumped up to amazing heights. I had no idea a goat could jump so high, but the back of the cage was a high, smooth, and cement wall. With sudden ease the trapdoor slid open. Silence fell again, except for bleeding and the click of the goat's hooves against the floor. A streak of black and orange flowed from one cage to the next. Normally, the big cats were not given food 1 day a week to simulate conditions of the wild. We found out later that Father had ordered that Mahisha not fed for 3 days. I don't know if I saw blood before turning into Mother's arms, or if I dabbed it on later in my memory with a big brush, but I heard. It was enough scared to leave vegetarian daylights out of me. Scared the living vegetarian daylights out of me. Mother bundled us out. We were hysterics. She was incensed. How could you, Santosh? They're children. They'll be scared for the rest of their lives. Her voice was hot and tremendous. I could see she had tears in her eyes. I felt better. Gita, my bird. It's for their sake. What if Hasid had stuck his hand through the bars of the cage one day to touch the pretty orange fur? Better a goat than him. No? His voice was soft, nearly a whisper. He took contrite. He never called her my bird in front of us. We were huddled around her. He joined us, but the lesson was not over. Though it was gentler after that, Father led us to the lions and leopards. Once there was a madman in Australia who was a black belt in karate. He wanted to prove himself against the lions. He lost badly. The keepers found only half of his body in the morning. Yes, Father. The Himalayan bears and the sloth bears. Only strike of the claws from those cuddly creatures, and your innards will be scooped out and splattered all over the ground. Yes, Father, the hippos. With these soft, flappy mouths of theirs, they'll crush your body to a bloody pulp. On land, they can outrun you. Yes, Father, the hyenas. The strongest jaws in nature. Don't think they're cowardly or that they only eat carrion. They're not, and they don't. They'll start eating you while you're alive. Yes, Father. The orangutans. as strong as 10 men. They'll break your bones as if they were twigs. I know some of them were once pets and you played with them when they were small, but now they're grown up and wild and unpredictable. Yes, father, the ostrich. Looks flustered and silly, doesn't it? Listen up. One of the most dangerous animals in the zoo. Just one kick and your back is broken or your torso is crushed. Yes, father. The spotted deer. They're pretty, aren't they? If the male feels he has to, he'll charge you, and those short little antlers will pierce through you like daggers. Yes, father. The Arabian camel. One slobbering bite and you lost a chunk of flesh. Yes, father. The black swans. With their beaks, they'll crack your skull. With their wings, they'll break your arms. Yes, father. The smaller birds. They'll cut your fingers with their beaks, as if they were butter. Yes, father. The elephants. The most dangerous animals of all. More keepers and visitors are killed by elephants than by any other animal in a zoo. A young elephant will most likely dismember you and trample your body parts flat. That's what happened to poor lost soul in a European zoo who got into the elephant house through a window as more older patient animals will squeeze you against a wall or sit on you. Sounds funny, you think about it. Yes, father. These are animals we haven't stopped by. Don't think they're harmless. Life will defend itself no matter how small it is. Every animal is ferocious and dangerous. It may not kill you, but it will certainly injure you. It will scratch you and bite you, and you can look forward to a swollen, pest-filled infection, a high fever, and a 10th day in the hospital. Yes, father. We came, we came to the guinea pigs. The only other animal besides Mahisha to have been starved at father's orders. Having been denied the previous evening's meals, father unlocked his cage and brought out a bag of feed from his pocket and emptied it on the floor. You see these guinea pigs? Yes, father. These creatures are trembling with weakness and frantically nibbled the kernels of corn. Well, the creatures were trembling with weakness as they frantically nibbled their kernels of corn. Well, he leaned down and scooped one up. They're not dangerous. The other guinea pigs scattered instantly. Father laughed. He handed me the squealing guinea pig. He meant it to end. He meant it to end on a light note. The guinea pig rested in my arms tensely. It was a young one. I went to the cage and carefully lowered it to the floor. It rushed to its mother's side. The only reason those guinea pigs weren't dangerous, didn't draw blood, was their teeth and claws, was that they were practically domesticated. Otherwise, to grab a wild guinea pig with your bare hands would be like taking a hold of a knife by the blade. The lesson was over. Robbie and I sucked and gave father the cold shoulder for a week. Mother ignored him too. When I went by the rhinoceros pit, I fancied the rhinos' heads were hung low with sadness over the loss of one of their dear companions. But what can you do when you love your father? Life goes on and you don't touch tigers, except that now, for have accused Robbie of an unspecified crime he hadn't committed. It was good as dead. In years subsequent, when he was in the mood to terrorize me, he would whisper to me, "Just wait till we're done. You're the next goat." Okay. So these chapters are short. Okay, let me look at chat. Okay. Yet there will always be animals that seek to escape from zoos. Animals that are kept in unsuitable enclosures are the most obvious example. Every animal has particular habitat needs that must be met. If its enclosure is too sunny or too wet or too empty, if its perch is too high or too exposed, if the ground is too sandy, if there are too few branches to make a nest, if the food trough is too low, if there is not enough mud to wallow in and so many of other ifs, then the animals will not be peaceful. It is so much question of constructing an imitation of conditions in the wild as of getting the essence of these conditions. Everything in an enclosure must be just right, in other words, within the limits of animal capacity to adapt. A plague upon bad zoos with bad enclosures. They bring all zoos to disrepute. Wild animals are the captured when they are fully mature are another example of escape-prone animals. Often they are too set in their ways to reconstruct their subjective worlds and adapt to a new environment. But even animals that were bred in zoos and have never known the wild, that are perfectly adapted to their enclosures and feel no tension in the presence of humans, or the moments of excitement that push them to escape. All living things contain a measure of madness that moves them in strange, sometimes inexplicable ways. This madness can be saving. It is part and parcel of the ability to adapt. Without it, no species would survive. Whatever the reason for wanting to escape, insane zoo detractors should realize that animals don't escape to somewhere, but from something. Something within their territory has frightened them, the intrusion of an enemy, the assault of a dominant animal, a startling noise, and set off a flight reaction. The animal flees or tries to. I was surprised to read at the Toronto Zoo, a very fine zoo. I might add that leopards can jump 18 feet straight up. Our leopard enclosure in Pondicherry had a wall 16 feet high at the back. I surmised that Rosie and Copycat never jumped out, not because of constitutional weakness, but simply because they had no reason to. Animals that escape go from the known to the unknown, if there is one thing an animal hates above all else, it is the unknown. Escaping animals usually hide in the very first place they find. That gives them a sense of security, and they are dangerous not only to those who happen to get between them and the reckoned safe spot. Okay, chapter 11. Consider the case of the female black leopard that escaped from the Zurich Zoo in the winter of 1933. She was new to the zoo and seemed to get along with the male leopard. The various paw injuries hinted at matrimonial strife. Before any decision could be taken about what to do, she squeezed through a break in the roof bars of her cage. It vanished in the night. The discovery that a wild carnivore was free to their midst created an uproar among the city of Zurich. Traps were set and hunting dogs were let loose. They only rid the canton of its few half-wild dogs. Not a trace of the leopard was found for 10 weeks. Finally, a casual laborer came upon it under a barn 25 miles away and shot it. Remains of roe deer were found nearby. That a big black tropical cat managed to survive for more than 2 months in a Swiss winter without being seen by anyone, let alone attacking anyone, speaks plainly to the fact that escaped zoo animals are not dangerous, absconding criminals, but simply wild creatures seeking to fit in. And this case is just one of many. If you took the city of Tokyo and turned it upside down and shook it, you would be amazed at the animals that would fall out. It would pour more than the cats and dogs, I tell you. Boa constrictors, Komodo dragons, crocodiles, piranhas, ostriches, wolves, lynx, wallabies, manatees, porcupines, orangutans, wild boar, that's the sort of rainfall you could expect on your umbrella. And they expect to find the middle of a Mexican tropical jungle. Imagine, ha ha ha, it is laughable, simply laughable. What were they thinking? At times he gets agitated. Let me see. Let me look at chat. No one in chat. Okay. At times he gets agitated. It's nothing I say. I say very little, but it's his own story that does it. Memory is an ocean that he bobs on its surface. I wonder that he'll be. Oh, oh, jeez. It's nothing I say. I say very little, but it's his own story that does it. Memory is an ocean that he bobs on its surface. I worry that he'll want to stop, but he wants to tell me his story. He goes on. After all these years, Richard Parker still preys on his mind. He's a sweet man. Every time he prepares a South Indian vegetarian feast, I told him I like spicy food. I don't know why I said such a stupid thing. It's a complete lie. I add dollop of yogurt after dollop of yogurt, nothing doing. Each time it's the same. My taste buds shrivel up and die. My skin goes beet red. My eyes well up with tears, and my head feels like house. My head feels like a house on fire. My digestive tract starts to twist and groan in agony, like a boa constrictor that swallowed a lawnmower. Chapter 13. So you see, if you fall into the lion's pit, the reason the lion will tear you to pieces is not because it's hungry. Be assured. Zoo animals are amply fed, or because it's bloodthirsty, but because you've invaded its territory. As an aside, that is why a circus trainer must always enter the lion ring first in full sight of the lions. In doing so, he establishes that the ring in his territory is his territory, not theirs. A notion that he reinforces by shouting, by stomping about, by snapping his whip. The lions are impressed. Their disadvantage weighs heavily on them. Notice how they come in, mighty predators. Though they are kings of beasts, they crawl in with their tails low, and they keep to the edges of the ring, which is always round, so that they have nowhere to hide. They are in the presence of a strongly dominant male, a super alpha male, and they must submit to the dominance rituals, so they open their jaws wide. They sit up, they jump through paper-covered hoops, they crawl through tubes, they walk back, they roll over. He's a queer one. They think dimly. Never seen a top lion like him, but he runs a good pride. The larder's always full, and let's be honest, mates, his antics keeps us busy. Napping all the time gets us a bit boring. At least we're not riding bicycles like the brown bears or catching flying plates like the chimps. Only the trainer better make sure he always remembers he remains super alpha. He will pay dearly if he unwittingly slips to beta. Much hostile and aggressive behavior among animals is the expressive of social insecurity. The animal in the front of you must know where it stands, whether above you or below you. Social rank is essential to how it leads its life. Rank determines whom it can associate with, and when it can eat, where it can rest, where it can drink, and so on. Until it knows its rank for certain, the animal lives a life of unbearable anarchy. It remains jumpy, nervous. Luckily for the circus trainer, decisions about social rank among higher animals are not always based on brute force. Heidegger, 1950, says, when two creatures meet, the one that is able to intimidate its opponent is recognized as socially superior, so that the social decision does not always depend on a fight. An encounter in some circumstances may be enough. Words of a wise animal man. Mr. Hedger was for many years a zoo director, first of the Basel Zoo and then of the Zurich Zoo. He was a man well versed in ways of animals. It's a question of brain over brawn. The nature of the circus trainer's ascendancy is psychological. Foreign surroundings, the trainer's erect posture, calm demeanor, steady gaze, fearless step forward, strange roar, example the snapping of a whip, or the blowing of a whistle. There are so many factors that will fill the animal's mind with doubt and fear, and make clear to where it stands, the very thing it wants to know. Satisfied, number two will back down, and number one can turn the audience and shout, "Let the show go on!" And now, ladies and gentlemen, through hoops and rail fire. Chapter 14. Okay, this is going to be the last chapter. It is interesting to note that the line that is the most amenable to the circus trainer's tricks is the one with the lowest social standing in the pride, the omega animal. It has the most gain from the close relationships with the super alpha trainer. It is not only a matter of extra treats, a close relationship will also mean protection from the other members of the pride. It is the compliant animal, to the public no different from the others in size and apparent ferocity, that will be the star of the show, while the trainer leaves the beta and gamma lines more cantankerous subordinates sitting on their colorful barrels on the edge of the ring. The same is true for other circus animals, and also seen in zoos. Socially inferior animals are the ones that make the strenuous, resourceful efforts to get to know their keepers. They prove to be the ones most faithful to them, the most need of their company, least likely to challenge them or to be difficult. The phenomenon has been observed with big cats, bison, deer, wild sheep, monkeys, and many other animals. In fact, commonly known in the trade. Okay, so I am done reading for today. Sorry, my camera is off. Super alpha male, that's me. I see. You are a super alpha male. Yeah, my video camera keeps going off, so that's why I'm frozen right now. Let me see. Let's see. If I have... Okay, I have the BOD settings turned on. Okay, so I will go to the stream manager. So yeah, apparently Pokemon Rizuna is alpha. Let me go into the Twitch app and see if anyone is streaming so I can rate them. Looks like only one person is streaming right now. Let's see if we can rate them. I don't know. Okay, let's do it. Okay. Let's see, is this... Okay, wait. Okay, bye guys.